Hello and welcome to the Farming Simulator experience. There's plenty of stuff to do with all these acres of land granted to us, and that of course includes testing performance. Today we'll be plowing through all 4 mobile versions of the Farming Simulator franchise on the Vita. This includes 12, 14, 16, and 18. You may think that these games run without any flaws and therefore don't need coverage, but that's not quite the case. In chronological order, we start off with Farming Simulator 12. With a 30 FPS cap and play like the other mobile farming simulators, Farming Simulator 12 has the Vita's CPU and GPU clocked to a conservative 333 MHz and 111 MHz respectively. Even though the GPU speed is minimal, Farming Simulator 12 lacks any sort of alpha effects, and you can only zoom and pan your camera to expose so much of the map on your screen. Therefore, Farming Simulator 12 never drops from 30 FPS, which is a good thing because you'd want such rock solid performance for a game as action packed as this.
7秒経過ロードローラーだもう遅い脱出不可能よ8秒経過ぶっ潰れよ
Unfortunately, there is something that all of the Vita Farming Simulator games have that keeps their performance from being rock solid and consistent: improper frame pacing. At least once every 30 seconds, Farming Simulator interrupts the 33 millisecond frame render target by pushing a new frame out at 16.6 milliseconds, which is then stuck for the next 50 milliseconds until the next frame is delivered. If this happens twice in quick succession, it's pretty noticeable whether you're playing on the PSTV or the Vita, and it does, at the very least, blemish the experience. But the fact that it is using minimal resources to extend the battery life is a perk for the version. Next up is Farming Simulator 14. This is a quick one because it uses the same clock speeds as Farming Simulator 12, and, with barely any changes to the graphics or camera feature sets, still never drops from 30 FPS. Moving on to Farming Simulator 16, this introduces alpha effects while you're tending to your fields into the mix, and a change in camera perspectives, being able to pedestal the camera down to behind your vehicle. The newfound draw distance when your camera is close to your vehicle isn't too far off, but the skybox art does make some effort to remedy this issue. While these have been added, the game is still clocked to the same speed as its predecessors. However, this does prove to be too much for the Vita. The frame rate can drop to the low 20s if 1 or 2 vehicles are tending to crops or cutting down trees while the camera is positioned close to the vehicle you're controlling. I also came across a section of the map where the game would drop into the mid-20s. Pull the camera back further away, however, and the game won't drop any frames. For a complete lock at 30 FPS, you will need to bring up the GPU clock speed to 166 MHz. Lastly is Farming Simulator 18, which takes a departure from the primarily rural locations seen in the handheld entries and throws the game into the southern US with a denser map and a metropolitan area. Plus, it pushes out the level of detail for crops and changes how objects render in. Instead of how the scenery sort of cascaded into view on Farming Simulator 16, larger objects will fade in, followed by smaller objects as you get closer. And just for this latest entry, they bumped up the GPU's clock speeds to 166 MHz. But even with this, Farming Simulator can't keep to 30 FPS all the time. When tending to a cornfield using 2 tractors, the frame rate dipped to 26 FPS when they passed each other. Of course, this was with the camera all the way next to the tractor. The other case for the frame rates dropping was when I was driving near the mill, again with the camera near the tractor, where it had a sustained drop and went as low as 26 FPS. Bumping the GPU up to 222 MHz gave it a locked 30 FPS. It's certainly interesting how the series is seemingly split into 2 categories on the Vita. You may be able to see past the frame pacing issues if you're using hired workers often, so if you want your Farming Simulator experience on the Vita, It's pretty much a choice of either a longer battery life with more stable performance in the case of 12 and 14, or better scenery in the case of 18 and, to a lesser extent, 16. I hope you enjoyed the look at these games. I'll be coming back with more frame rate tests soon. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.